Now that's significant. The Market Research Podcast.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us on this latest episode of Now That's Significant, a market research podcast. This is your host Michael Howard, the Head of Marketing at InfoTools. Today we're joined by Heather O'Shea, Chief Research Officer at Alter Agents, a full-service strategic market research consultancy reimagining research in an era of shifting decision-making. Heather is a passionate digital ad insights leader with over 16 years of experience in market research and consumer insights. She has held positions at media agencies, publishers, tech platforms, and research companies. Prior to her current position with Alter Agents, she was head of global ad research and insights at Snap. In this role, she produced thought leadership to educate the advertising industry and marketing community on mobile and Snapchat advertising through data-driven insights and empirical evidence. During her career, she has conducted market research and media research for a wide variety of advertisers, including Twitter, Johnson & Johnson, Colgate, Palmolive, Sony, and Campbell's. She serves as a mentor for women in research, and has served on the board of Advertising Research Foundation's Women in Analytics program. She received her MBA in marketing from Baruch College at the City University of New York. Thanks for joining us on the show, Heather.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for talking me up.
That's right. I do enjoy people's bios. It's always fascinating to see where people have come from. So.
Yeah.
So Heather, we do like to talk about significant topics in the market research space, hence our name of the podcast. With that in mind, what did you want to share with us today?
Yeah, so today I would like to talk about how I believe the big data bubble is bursting, which places even greater importance on market research. With less reliable real-time signals, now is the time to go back to our roots as marketers and use market research techniques to boost our audience understanding, create strategies, and make decisions. And there's a couple of reasons why I think it's important now. I know, we'll likely get more into it, but just at a high level, the data landscape is evolving with more and more regulations, whether it be GDPR, Apple's ATT, which is App Tracking Transparency, the looming demise of third-party cookies beyond Safari, but also with Chrome, amongst other local regulations that continue to be rolled out. So it just gets harder and harder to deterministically tie an ad exposure to an action. Decreasing the viability and accuracy of some of our existing media and advertising measurement techniques. So, thinking about direct attribution, MTA, so less ability to rely on this type of direct response measurement for decision making.
So going back to basics is always great advice. It does sound like we're in danger a little bit of losing real-time insights as well. Is that what you've been seeing, or?
Well, real-time data might become available, but whether that's something that can be trusted to make million-dollar decisions, maybe not so much.
No, true. So we have a great topic, and I'm sure it's very timely and pertinent for many of our listeners at the moment. But before we dive deeper into this, we'd love to hear a bit more about your background and career journey and what's led up to this bubble bursting perspective that you have.
Sure, yeah. Well, I started out my career on the research team at media agencies. And while I was there, it was a dynamic and fast-paced environment where, I might be running a cluster analysis and analyzing audience segments one day, conducting focus groups about media habits another day, or putting together, a media campaign evaluation utilizing brand lift results later that week. So it was an opportunity for me to immerse myself in a wide array of research and measurement methodologies. And really, I don't see media agencies having teams of this nature any longer. They seem to be very much embedded in accounts which have a benefit and very much focused on the analytics and the direct response measurement. But setting that aside, early on in my career, digital media began to command a greater share of media budgets. So, when I first joined, it was mostly like TV and print, which physical magazines and newspapers and things like that, and radio and other channels. So digital was really just starting to come into the fold. And I volunteered to be the digital expert and began evaluating different online measurement methodologies, writing POVs on some of the best techniques and how to do market research to really understand how people were consuming digital and mobile and where advertising and media could fit into that. And supporting the client teams who did begin leaning more heavily on digital for their media buys. And this was a pivotal moment for my career. It really launched my career and set me up to then move over to Twitter, where I built a research team that focused on growing Twitter's ad partnerships with agencies through thought leadership and research and partnership with them. And since Twitter, I've led the brand lift and copy testing teams in North America at Kantar and led global ad research and insights at Snapchat. So, prior to joining Alter Agents, where I am now, my career was really focused in the advertising and media space. And I've always found myself straddling, the two different worlds of traditional market research and ad analytics and measurement. And while market research and measurement can be viewed as two sides of the same coin, I've always felt that they exist in a bit of a prioritization battle. And so over the years, I've seen the value of these market research techniques rise to the surface again and again. And this remains true in today's complex, getting even more complex landscape. And so I felt that the time was right for me to focus my career in market research and true client consultation, which is what brought me into this role overseeing the research team at Alter Agents.
Yeah, cool. That sounds like an exciting background that you're bringing to the role. When do you feel that the peak of the digital space was, and then that slow sort of incline of quality that we witnessed?
Yeah, so about 10 years or so ago, maybe I don't know that I could pinpoint it, but in the 2010 to 2015, big data was one of the most referenced terms in the marketing world. And at that time, there was a lot of information being collected on consumers that they weren't even aware of. And particularly as retargeting became more ubiquitous, in that if you were to go to a website and shop for a pair of shoes, later on you might be on a different website and see those same shoes advertised to you. People started to realize that this information was being collected across all of the different websites that they would go to and being used to share with them, advertising that was considered relevant. But there wasn't necessarily an option, right? There wasn't that opt-in to being able to decide what private information about your online habits were being shared back with these companies and which companies were collecting that information. So that lack of transparency is what has led to both local governments stepping in and technology companies making a decision to further protect their users and people who are either subscribing or buying their products.
Really cool. What do you think some of the pitfalls were with this whole digital first sort of movement that there was for brands?
Yeah, well, I think having all of these data available to us, brands began to rely pretty heavily on it, because if you can see specifically which ads were most likely to be clicked on and lead to a direct sale, it becomes, perhaps exciting or even tempting to put all of your efforts into evaluating specifically those types of actions on the decision making that you're doing. So I've witnessed that many marketers are relying very heavily on big data and direct response advertising and measurement. They're, optimizing campaigns on the fly based on what numbers say about what's working and what's not, and based on what they are allowed to see with regards to who clicked on an ad and immediately made that purchase. Connecting online or offline purchases to prior exposure using probabilistic methods starts to get really tricky now as these privacy regulations continue to roll out and are enforced. So where previously it was connected to, at the very least, that same device or that same cookie, that same computer, now there's a bit more guessing going into whether the person who made the purchase was the same person who was exposed to a specific ad. So there simply becomes too many holes to trust the data available are reliable and are representative. So, some of the pitfalls are you're making these assumptions and there's not really a true understanding of target audiences. And you can also, if you're focusing too much on what's happening in the moment in the campaign and not doing that prior market research and that prior thinking, and you're focusing too much on the big data and not as much on the qualitative information about what's important to growing market share for your brand, or who are some of those outside consumers who have yet to convert, and you're focusing too much on the people that are going to click right now and are going to make that purchase right now, you might be eroding your brand in the long term and excluding these really important audiences.
Sure. So it sounds like market research obviously has a big role to play in this. How can we use market research to address some of these challenges?
Yeah, so, in a way, this decision to lean more heavily on market research is being made for us as the ecosystem changes, right? These shortcomings of media measurement are providing marketers with this wake-up call to be more proactive and to lean more on brand research. So the way we can, maybe revisit how market research was harnessed to inform advertising decisions and getting into the rigor of proactively understanding audiences. So some ways we can do that are qualitative interviews, conducting consumer segmentation, and there's even more advanced techniques that have been developed over the same time, almost in parallel to the evaluation of big data, is looking at where true attention and engagement with media lies through eye tracking and neuroscience methods, and evaluating how messages are received in different contexts with true experimental design. So these can all help us get to know our audiences and their relationships with brands and media deeply before campaigns are developed or before media is even live. And once we understand our audience, we can then better identify and craft the most powerful messages for these individuals, determine which mediums provide the best platforms for sharing these messages in order to engage and hold their attention.
Yeah. So the different marketing research tools, they all have their gaps, if you will. So when you layer multiple ones up, they kind of help fill those gaps, and you can find some really interesting insights in the holes and the white spaces, if you will. Have you seen any ways that people are combining those to really get the most out of their market research spend?
Yeah, that's a great point. And much of the research that we do with our brands are multimodal in that sense. So we're getting layers and we're being iterative to continue to learn and help make smarter decisions. So great example of this was actually while I was a client of Alter Agents. So while I was at Snapchat, we had a really challenging question to unpack. It was April 2020. And if you remember what life was like in April 2020, our worlds have all been turned upside down. A lot of people in a lot of countries were home and using social media more than ever. And at Snapchat, we were approached by one of our partners, Omnicom Media Group, to identify how media consumption might shift permanently for younger generations, such as millennials and Gen Z, and how that might change coming out of the pandemic. And what we later learned was that there was no real coming out of the pandemic, right? But putting that aside, we at the time engaged Alter Agents to design a multimodal study that helped us answer these complex questions to provide actionable insights as brands navigated those challenging times. So we used advanced analytics to identify motivations and moods that people were in when using different digital media. So asking the questions, and series of questions in a way and using driver's analysis to understand more deeply than asking people outright. We actually also applied agile neuroscience. So during a time when many neuroscience labs were closed, we were able to use people's existing smartwatches that they owned, or we would send, Alter Agents would send them a device that they could wear around their wrist to track the space in between their heartbeats. So it was an amazing technology that was being studied for many years and used in both academic and practical approaches, but just starting to be measured using the smartwatches. So it was actually very good timing that the lab measurement was not available, and we could do this virtually in people's homes. At the same time, it was also a much more natural environment because we were measuring their social media and other types of media use in their home, and we kept all of the research participants safe. And that allowed us to identify emotional engagement. So while we were asking and using advanced analytics to kind of get moods and motivations, we could then start to map that using neuroscience, both attention and emotional engagement with these different media, as well as how advertising performed in these environments. And it actually gave us a really amazing set of learnings, which we then were able to communicate to brands and marketers who were thinking about the best way to engage with these audiences during that time.
Yeah, so I imagine the mix of methodologies would look different to different brands, industry categories, or even the goals of the research. How do you typically approach choosing the right methodologies or mix when it comes to going back to the basics?
Yeah. I mean, it's really true. Every brand is different. Every audience is different. So one size doesn't fit all. I've been kind of noodling around, what would we call this future framework between measurement and media research? And I've been kind of coining it adaptive media research. When you're innovating, which is what we must do to follow audience attention and what's available to us, we're often encountering the unexpected and uncharted territory. So building in that flexibility from the start, knowing the toolkit that's available is the best path to success. So, as I kind of mentioned earlier, as market researchers today, we have lots to work with. So we can extract the most value from blending methodologies and data sources. So even maybe some of those real-time data sources could be valuable if blended with other signals, and to have a more holistic picture. So while I did share my reservations about current direct response, I don't think it means it goes away. I think it just means that it needs to go alongside some proactive upfront planning and market research, and a greater blend of the two to unpack the questions that we're seeing in our ever evolving landscape.
Yeah, cool. Are there any subtleties that you've come across as well when you are blending methodologies and data sources?
That's a good question. I think that's what we'll see. So I do feel like measurement has been kept separate from market research for some time. and perhaps because like the practitioners split off and went in one direction or another. So what I would love to see is that we come together as an industry and build a framework and start to guide marketers towards more confidence in their media buy and more consistent, reliable campaign measurement outcomes, which ultimately will lead to greater achievement of KPIs. So coming together, blending those data sets and identifying what some of those nuances might be.
Yes, yeah, because as you said, the big data bubble is bursting at the start. I mean, we've got the likes of ChatGPT, which is they've just released their API, for instance. So you've got businesses flocking to that. And I guess you could say that the data set for ChatGPT has been trained and it is sandboxed as well. So it is a year old. So there shouldn't be too many surprises in that. But yes, yeah, I mean, we do have a really interesting world that we're entering into, and trying to balance that between the traditional and the new is going to be a challenge per se. But if we can start showing the results, the metrics, return on investments, etc., we should be able to get back onto that path to creating understanding that people can have confidence in.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a really fun dynamic industry and world for us to be a part of, and that it is ever changing, and we keep getting better at it and smarter, and so we do have to just continue to challenge ourselves. And I know when many of these regulations started to roll out, the first advancements that I started to see on the like deep measurement side was a movement back towards market mix modeling and geo testing, which we used to call match market testing 10, 15 years ago. So while those were at one time maybe out of style, they've come back again, but not in the same way. They're advanced, right? There's this blending of A/B testing with match market testing and being able to have quicker turn and integrating things like machine learning. So again, I'd like to see where market research can evolve and media research can evolve and integrate some of the best parts of ChatGPT and some of the most amazing things that we're seeing with AI and machine learning, alongside what has been tried and true and what is very successful in deriving powerful, actionable insights for advertisers and for marketers.
Really cool. So, is there anything final that you'd like to add before we wrap?
I think as like a summary to some of what I have been sharing, media measurement is a field that's experiencing massive disruption, but I'm excited for what the future will hold. It's still going to hold a really critical place in our data picture and decision making, but it's not going to always be as holistic in terms of audience understanding and really tying in those brand plus direct response outcomes. And that's where market research can come in. So, let us become experts in understanding brand audiences, in understanding what motivates them, what media matters to them, and what messaging is going to resonate best with them. And let's use that proactively before we are already in field and trying to make decisions on imperfect data.
Very true. So if I can recap what we've talked about, how brands need to go back to the basics with their approach to market research. The reasons, as you outlined at the beginning, was the evolution of the consumer data landscape, so GDPR and Apple's app tracking transparency, the demise of third-party cookies as well. We've seen a lot of disruption in the digital collection space as well, particularly lowering of quality as well. So there is work going on to improve that, but we also need to supplement or complement that with additional traditional and also new techniques as well for generating or collecting data and insights. We have had a reduced ability to rely on direct response attribution measurement for decision making as well. So they're all reasons to be mindful of going back to the basics. We also heard from Heather about how market research can address these challenges as well. Just remembering our role in audience understanding and really getting to know what makes consumers tick. So the world that we're moving into and that we're in is exciting. It is a fun time to be in market research as well, and I guess our role in the world has never been more needed now. So fun times ahead. I think that covers it, right, Heather?
Yeah, that was a great recap. Thanks.
That's quite all right. So thank you so much for joining us on today's episode.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Michael. This is a really fun conversation, and I hope it can be enlightening to others. Looking forward to, continuing the discussion and the debate with others in the industry.
Yeah, cool. So thank you. And if anyone has been interested in what you've heard today, feel free to reach out to Heather and the team at Alter Agents. We'd also appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the podcast or even left a review on your podcast platform as well. Feel free to share it with others as well. They might appreciate what we've talked about today too. So catch you on the next episode of Now That's Significant.